Welcome back to Mental Training Thursdays. This week we're going to talk about tapping into joy, whether that's things like life in general or with regard to your sport. But first we have two questions that we're going to answer from last week. And the first one was, last week you talked about a ball in a pool and that the ball was emotions and that it might be hard to hold them underwater. What if I'm strong enough or have enough energy to hold that ball underwater and it isn't affecting me?
The great question. So first, what I would say is, so when you think about avoiding emotions, uncomfortable, comfortable, whatever they are, typically they're uncomfortable. The ball in the pool. So for those of you that didn't watch last week or weren't able to attend, it's this idea of pushing the ball underwater. And those are our thoughts or uncomfortable emotions that we're trying to avoid. And it can get tiring. So the question then is posed, well, what if I have enough strength or energy to just keep holding that down, to keep avoiding it? I think what I would say is I would encourage you to reflect on first, what is your reasoning for wanting to continue to do that? Because sometimes we have a fear of letting the emotion come and are worried that it's going to be so overwhelming that we're not going to be able to handle it. And if you do reflect and you do realize that maybe that's why you're avoiding it, feel free to reach out to us. We have plenty of different tools that can help you to relate to your emotions in different ways. And also just know the bottom line is you can handle whatever comes your way as far as emotion and thoughts. So we're here for support. And the other thing to think about is thinking about circumstances or context, right? So in this instance, you might feel like you're able to hold it down. And the way that I work is I always ask, well, is that really working for you? And it might be. It might be working for you right now. Is it going to work for you in the long term? Maybe not, right? So if you think about the amount of time and energy that is spent on holding that uncomfortable emotion down, avoiding it, or even those uncomfortable thoughts, that's still taking energy away, even if you feel like you're strong enough to avoid it. The piece with context is it might be working in this situation, but what if waves came in the pool? Or what if waves came in the ocean or the lake, wherever you are that you're, with the metaphor, holding it down? With a little bit more stress in your life, it might all of a sudden feel like you can't anymore. And so with some of these tools that we're teaching you, and if you reach out to us, the idea is to kind of get ahead of it, right? So if you can acknowledge that you are avoiding some uncomfortable emotion or thought ahead of time before maybe you reach that different context that's stressing you, then you'll have a little more space to be able to manage that emotion or relate to them in a different way. I think, so understanding what works, what doesn't, long-term, holding it down does take a lot of energy. And then even in the short term, the idea there is, well, you're still holding something down. So you're really not able to swim across the pool to where your friends maybe are hanging out. And if you do, it's a little more challenging. So what I would say after explaining all of that ultimately is do some reflection and really see if that is helpful for you. And also be open and willing to explore different ways of relating to uncomfortable thoughts and emotions. So with that, we actually had another question posed to us that Mac's going to answer. So the question has to do with a hashtag that we've been using on Instagram. What does the hashtag PsychFlex in your posts mean?
So PsychFlex is something that is kind of two different ideas. One being the idea that when you strengthen something, you're flexing your muscles and you have to keep working at it and repeating it and reinforcing it. So a lot of the things that we talk about each week, you need to keep flexing them to strengthen them. You need to keep working them. So that's one way that you could look at it, is you're flexing your mind the same way you're flexing your muscles to strengthen something. But the other thing that Psych Flex is standing for is psychological flexibility. So in order to have a growth mindset, there's that adaptability and that flexing versus keeping things more rigid and fixed. And that's going to help you be able to better mentally adapt to different challenging situations. That's a lot of what we also are trying to provide and help support you around in these webinars, or if you come in and talk with us. So just remember that if you're trying to build anything, you have to flex the muscles, but you also have to make sure they stay flexible, otherwise you could get injured. And so that's essentially, in a nutshell, what Psych Flex is on our Instagram. So please, again, always send us questions. You can send them to mac.brown@colorado.edu, and we'll spend the first few minutes next week answering them.
So with that, we're going to shift into today's topic, which is returning to the joy of sport and life. And so I'm going to prime you with an imagery exercise that will also build the imagery muscle, the guided meditation muscle, and also show you how we can incorporate joy in those two skills. So with that, I invite you to sit with your feet flat on the floor and your back straight, and either fix your eyes on a spot or close your eyes, whichever you prefer. Now bring your attention to your breathing and observe it as if you're a curious scientist who's never encountered breathing before. Notice the air as it comes in through your nostrils and goes down to the bottom of your lungs, expanding your diaphragm. And notice as it flows back out again. Notice the air as it's moving in and out of your nostrils, how it's slightly warmer as it comes out and slightly cooler as it goes back in. Once you've paid attention to your breathing and observed it in that way, now shift your attention to the word joy and notice it. Notice what feelings or thoughts might come up that are associated with that word. We can begin the joy practice by imagining a time in which you experienced some joy. It may have been something relatively small, a simple moment of happiness. As something comes to mind, just pay attention to how it feels to rest in this memory. You can cultivate this intention to rejoice in your own happiness by offering yourself a few phrases, self-statements of appreciation. Some examples could include, may I be happy. May my happiness continue. May I be present for my joy. May I appreciate the joy in my life. You can offer these phrases silently in your head, connecting with your intention to hang out with and appreciate the joy you experience. Now begin to draw this experience to a close. Feel where your hands are positioned on your body. Feel the points of contact between your body and the chair or the ground. Maybe wiggle your fingers and toes, seeing what sensations arise. And observe any feelings that may have been generated by this joy practice. And as you do that, take 3 deep breaths as you sit with these feelings, letting them be just what they are. And when you're ready, gently open or refocus your eyes and bring your awareness back to the screen.
So now that you've been primed to have an opportunity to reflect on some moments of joy in your life, we wanted to provide a very tangible activity that you can use as a way to help tap back into those joyful moments or to re-engage with them or remind yourself of them. So there's something called a joy jar, and you can use, this is just a mason jar that I had in my house right now. You can go to the dollar store, you can use any kind of container or vessel that you have, and in it are Post-it notes. And what you can do is use them as opportunities each day to reflect on something that brought you joy that day. So for instance, it could be the opportunity you had to see something really cool outside in nature. It could be the fact that you're now back at CU and you get to start doing voluntary workouts again, and just the joy that having that as an opportunity again might bring you. Whatever it is, you can use this jar to collect those moments and reflect on them each day. It gives that kind of reinforcement in training yourself to recognize and reflect those moments when they are there. And then anytime you might be feeling like you're getting depleted or you're having a little bit of trouble latching on to that feeling, you can go back into this jar and pull something out. You can get really creative with it too, so you can color code it so that the different colors represent maybe memories or intentions or even strategies or tips for things that you know would bring you joy. Like if you're having a moment, go listen to that song. It always makes you feel exponentially more joyful. So you can make this your own and use it to help you generate those joyful moments and reflect on those joyful moments throughout the year. Some people do this once a day for an entire 365, and then they look back at them at the end of the year. You can use it in a way to stock up and then pull from it when you need it. There are a lot of other ways that you can use this jar, and you can have multiple jars, right? So you might have one jar that represents your joy of sport and competition and training and all the things that would help you tap back into that in its own dedicated jar. You can create other jars for things like joy in relationships, whether they're romantic or friendship based. You can have a jar that's focused on goals that you have and things that would help keep you in the joy of pursuing that desired goal that you have, and reinforcers or encouragements to help you keep moving towards that. So this is something that is really nice because it's visual, it's right in front of you. You can put it somewhere where you can see it every day. And it's a reminder to both reflect and to engage in the things that would bring you joy. And even just, I know this is a plain jar, but if being creative brings you joy, you can use this as an opportunity to tap into your creativity and decorate the jar so that it's also visually replicating something that brings you joy.
So with that, we're going to wrap up for today's session. Thank you for joining us for this week. Next week's topic is seizing the opportunity, and we hope you can join us for that. That will be our final one for the summer. We will take a break until August and then start back up in August. So next week, seizing the opportunity, if you'd like to join us then. So I'll close us out with a quote for today. The real joy in life comes from, let me start over. The real joy in life comes from finding your true purpose and aligning it with what you do every single day. Tony Robbins.